Well, I have 3 o'clock. I shall call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We shall have roll call, please. Carolina?
Councilmember Gullikson?
Yes.
Salvi?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Correll?
Yes.
Mayor Wolf?
Yes. We shall now ask for approval of this afternoon's agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Today is, we have a public hearing on administrative appeal. So that's the only item on this agenda, so we just approve that. Good afternoon, everyone. How we doing back there? Can you hear me okay? All right, well, we only have 2 outside mics, and I'm going to reserve those microphones for council and any witnesses that may be present. So I'll have to apologize in advance for that. We just have the 2 mics. So we'll all try to speak up as best we can. Once again, good afternoon. This hearing is in the matter of the administrative appeal of Ann Barber. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 2.05 of the Morris City Code and the rules of procedure for administrative appeals and other hearings which the City Council has adopted. The petitioner is Ann Barber, represented by attorney Justin Anderson. Maybe raise your hand, council, thank you. The respondent is the City of Morris through its city manager, represented by attorney Susan Hanson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. They have already been provided copies of the rules. I won't recite the rules here, but will note a few things before we start. As mayor, I preside over the hearing. I will make rulings on the admission of evidence when necessary. I will step back and consult with the city attorney and assistant city attorney if needed when making rulings. The city attorney's role in this hearing is to advise me and the city council when necessary, not to represent either side during the hearing. I will ask the city attorney to speak up and let me know if there is a point of procedure I miss, since we do not have hearings of this nature very often. The petitioner's attorney will present evidence first, including any witnesses they choose to call. Then the respondent's attorney will present any evidence and witnesses on behalf of the respondent. Each side will have the opportunity to cross-examine each other's witnesses. Members of the City Council who would like additional information will also have the opportunity to ask questions of witnesses when the attorneys are done. The purpose of the questions is to get information from the witnesses rather than to comment. Each party will have an opportunity to present rebuttal evidence and testimony to what the other party presents. I and the rest of the City Council will hear the evidence that is presented by the parties. After hearing the evidence, it is my understanding that the attorneys for the parties have agreed they will be submitting written arguments and any proposed findings no later than August 7th, 2025. Then the matter will be taken under advisement and the City Council will deliberate on that evidence at its meeting on August 12th, 2025, unless a different date is set. A final formal decision of the City Council is due within 30 days of the written arguments. While the decision is pending, the rules require that neither party communicate directly or indirectly with any member of the city council concerning any issue of fact or law at this hearing other than through their attorney's written arguments. This is to ensure a fair proceeding. This hearing is solely for the administrative appeal and will not have citizens' comments portion. We have set aside time starting at 3 p.m. today, with the regular council meeting pushed back until 7:15 this evening in order to hear evidence. It is important that we keep that time available for presentation of evidence by the attorneys. The opportunity for citizens' comments will be at the regular council meetings, both today and in the future. I ask all members of the public to refrain from noise during the hearing so everyone can hear and we can proceed in an orderly manner. I don't see any signs. We were going to address that, but it doesn't appear that we have any, so I will skip that portion. We will start with the opening statements, followed by presentation of testimony and any other evidence. Before we proceed with opening statements, do either of the attorneys have any issues that need to be addressed?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Hanson and I visited prior to the hearing today, understanding that the rules provide petitioner an opportunity to go first. I had intended on calling 3 of the witnesses on the city's witness list. Those questions, of course, would be in the nature of some form of cross-examination, and I would assume that Ms. Hanson would then call those witnesses in their case in chief. I don't have an issue for the orderly and expedient handling of the hearing with permitting Ms. Hanson to examine the witnesses that she intended on calling, and then just be given some latitude to the extent that my questions would reach beyond something that would be typically considered as cross-examination.
Council, seems fair. That seems reasonable to me. Any objection?
Mayor Wallers, members of the city council, no, council and I discussed this and thought that that would be the most expeditious process to avoid duplication, unnecessary duplication of witness calling and to move the process along. Therefore, the city intends to call 2 witnesses as part of its initial presentation, the investigator in this matter, as well as the city manager. Council and I have discussed this, and then we can proceed from there.
Okay. So you want to kind of flip-flop then? You want to go first then? Is that what I'm understanding? Or
As far as the witnesses.
as far as the
our
witnesses are
presentation
concerned?
of
Okay.
our witnesses.
So I guess at this point then, the petitioner, I guess as we stated earlier, can go first. Joe, is that what we're doing then?
Well, if Ms. Hanson is calling her witness first with
Okay.
Mr. Anderson's agreement, I think that's fine.
We'll just
Is that correct?
start with that.
Yeah, it would avoid
Okay.
duplication.
That is fine then.
We're trying to be mindful,
Yep.
Mayor Wallers, of the timeline.
Yep.
And just the orderly and expeditious process of the hearing.
Sure, thank you for that. Appreciate it. So with that, you can,
May I ask a quick, have
Yes.
council stipulated to any exhibits?
We're fine with the exhibits.
Yes, we.
Then I will hand them out now if that's okay.
Yeah, we do have some rebuttal witnesses, some rebuttal exhibits potentially, and I've alerted council to that, but as far as the initial exhibits A through E, and then E has sub-exhibits 1 through 13, and then F through I, and then I believe opposing council had 3 separate exhibits.
I marked the library system printout as 1 exhibit, and marked that as exhibit J. And the Amazon, or the Audible screenshot as exhibit J.
So if they're stipulated to, I'll just hand them out to the council now.
Thank you.
and just a reminder, any witnesses that come forward, they will be sworn in. So when you approach the witness, all witnesses will proceed over to the table with the microphone, and then I'll swear you in at that point.
Thank you.
Mayor Wallers, members of the city council, we do have a duplicate copy of the employer's notebook of exhibits for the witness table. And so, council, if you'd like to inspect that, you're welcome to do so, but since we take note of that.
So, before this just ask if either party wishes to give an opening statement.
Okay?
And then otherwise, it sounds like that's my first.
Yeah, Ms. Hanson's gonna go first. Before we proceed, would council like to, either council like to present any opening statements? You're free to do so at this time.
I can just have a minute to get.
Yep.
Mayor?
Yep, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, members of the city council, again, my name is Justin Anderson. I represent Ann Barber with respect to the appeal of her 20-day unpaid suspension. Ann has served as the librarian for the city of Morris for nearly a decade. She has, up to this point, an impeccable record of service, no disciplinary action. I think the role of the librarian as set forth in your policies is important. She is charged with providing reading materials and non-print materials, as well as current technology and electronic resources for people of all ages, skills, abilities, backgrounds, and economic needs. She serves the community in promoting lifelong learning, cultural enrichment, and entertainment by connecting people of all ages, skills, abilities, backgrounds, and economic needs. This is directly from one of the exhibits, and you should be proud with having charged your librarian with those tasks. In February this year, she noticed a few receipts that were missing and an audible charge that didn't seem right to her. There was also an email exchange about processing invoices from the city manager. Shortly thereafter, on February 27th, 2025, she was placed on paid administrative leave and was informed that the city had initiated an investigation into allegations of misconduct against her. That's all she knew. She didn't know what it was alleged that she was doing wrong. She knew nothing about the topic of the investigation until she appeared for an interview with Callie Gelbert Nelson, the investigator hired by the city, and was presented with literally a mountain of paperwork. She was inundated with questions about items being shipped to her home, the purchase of AirPods, Amazon Prime Video charges, Audible charges, AMC Plus charges, and purchases made through Amazon that utilize the city's tax exemption. More or less, what Ann was being accused of is stealing. Central to the investigation and included in the exhibits was a casual email that was sent from Maggie Bussey to Ann back in October 23, questioning why Ann was having material shipped to her home. She indicated in that email, as she did to the investigator, that she would ship these materials to her home to preview them, to meet the charges that the city council has imposed upon her as the librarian. There was no follow-up to that email. There was no policy, no further direction. To our knowledge, the city manager was unaware of the email. There wasn't the concern was with the others. Nevertheless, Ann conformed her behaviors, having only 8 items shipped to her house after that email from someone who is not her supervisor. Now, the investigation result that you received prior to the Loudermill hearing, where I had an opportunity to address you, but that was closed, and I need to do this for the record as there is no record of that meeting, indicated that 67 items were missing, and those items were valued at a little over $1,300. We will hear from Ms. Gelbert Nelson today as to what efforts she made in locating those items and the reason why either Ann or those she suggested were not asked to help in the search for these materials. Even before the Loudermill hearing, as I mentioned to you before, several of the items had been located, and you will hear today that all but one of the items, I think it's a book called The Evil Garden, are accounted for. Does that in and of itself give rise to disciplinary action? What policy has been violated? As you look through the investigative material, there are no references to state statutes, there are no references to policy unless they are procedural. During the course of the investigation, there was a suggestion that the AirPods were not purchased for a legitimate purpose, but Ann explained to the investigator, as she will explain to you today, that they were purchased for library purposes and were located in a desk drawer that the investigator was unable to locate. With respect to Amazon Prime Videos, Ann will testify, as she told the investigator, that she was previewing materials for the library. Morris is a very diverse community. They don't want, Ann did not want to offend any part of that community by airing things that were not appropriate. The total charges for Amazon Prime Video total $79.11 and were incurred over the course of 1 year, less than $7 per month. Does this seem reasonable given her charge to preview materials for the library? Does it seem excessive or for personal use that she was utilizing Amazon Prime Video for her own purposes? Wouldn't one expect that the charges would be significantly more if that was her intended purpose? And this is a point where, you know, I don't know that the investigation flushed out what the real facts are here, because there is reference in that report to Swank. Swank is a licensing product that the city buys. It contains no content. It is necessary in order to show movies, which would be consistent with what Ann was doing in previewing and then displaying films at the library. The same is true with the Audible account. You will see something not contained in your report, which is a screenshot of the library's Audible account. The charges for that total $47.94 for, I believe, a 4 or 5 month period. The Audible account was accessed twice. On August 3rd of 2024, it was access to listen to the birds, the bees, and the elephant in the room in the pet cemetery. Now, if you Google how long it takes that to listen to those books, it's nearly an entire day. What is significant is there was absolutely no activity after August 3rd of 2024, and certainly nothing leading up to the investigation here. Any conclusion that the Audible account was used for Ann's personal benefit simply doesn't flush out on these facts. The AMC subscription is a mystery to Ann, but she will testify that it was not accessed for her own personal use. Finally, with respect to the items purchased under the city's tax exemption, nothing was intentional. We don't know what items purchased would have, regardless of whether or not the tax exemption was applied, been subject to taxation or not. And to that end, and corrected to do what is right, Ann has engaged her tax accountant to determine what needs to be done in order to pay the appropriate tax. After the investigation was completed and some of these things were flushed out before the city council, Ann received a letter from the city manager indicating that she was subject to discipline, including possible termination. As a result of the Loudermill hearing, this body took no action, but shortly thereafter, Ann was suspended for 20 days, the maximum penalty that can be imposed by the city manager without this body's approval. The reasons given: unaccounted materials, which has now been resolved. Amazon Prime charges that were utilized for library purposes. Audible and AMC charges that were incurred by mistake and not used by Ann, and oversight related to the city's tax exemption. And perhaps the thing that is most upsetting to Ann is the allegation that she was not truthful with the investigator, when she had absolutely no background into what was being investigated. In her mind, it related back to a couple missing receipts and an Audible account which she had reported as fraudulent. So the basis or the general premises, as opposed to, the policy or statute that were violated, were expectations that employees be accurate, truthful, and transparent, to be able to account for public expenditures and not using public funds for personal gain. Ann has been accurate, truthful, and transparent. She sought recovery of the missing materials, suggested ways to assist in that search. She reported the Audible charges as fraudulent before any investigation was undertaken, and did not access that account or AMC. There's absolutely no evidence that she used any public funds for her personal gain. She has dedicated herself to her library and is thankful that she continues to be able to serve in that capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mayor Wallers, members of the city council, my name is Susan Hanson. I'm here with Grace Swatsky, our law clerk from Madden, Gallanter Hanson. And together with the city manager, we are appearing as the respondent in this matter on behalf of the city of Morris. We are here to request that you uphold the 20-day disciplinary suspension that was issued to Ann Barber. As part of this hearing, you will hear testimony from an outside independent investigator, an attorney who is skilled in conducting employment investigations. That employment investigation was done utilizing standard operating procedures associated with public employment investigations. As part of that investigation, Ms. Barber was given the right to have legal counsel present. Ms. Barber was also given a data practices authority. As is standard operating procedure in an employment investigation, Ms. Barber was not given a laundry list of the allegations against her in advance of the interview. That simply is not done in employment investigations. Instead, in the course of the interview with Ms. Barber was asked to respond to questions with her attorney by her side, as is standard in employment investigations. The employment investigation done by the outside independent attorney substantiated serious misconduct on the part of Ms. Barber. Different allegations were sustained. Those allegations were investigated, and a detailed employment investigation report with exhibits are before you. First, that investigation determined that Ms. Barber ordered items utilizing the city's credit card and sent them to her home. Now, Ms. Barber was specifically directed not to do so in an email from October of 2023. Now, we've heard that email characterized as a, quote, casual email. A casual email is what counsel describes that. Counsel describes this as having no follow-through. The evidence establishes otherwise, members of the city council. What we see in this email from the then accountant at the city of Morris is a statement indicating from October 2, 2023 to Ms. Barber, I noticed on the credit card statement that some items are shipping to your house. I'm not sure if sometimes this is getting selected by mistake, but we should definitely have all items shipped to the library that are purchased with the library credit card. We should definitely have all items shipped to the library that are purchased with the library card. That is not a casual email. Ms. Barber responded, sometimes I will purposely ship to my house so that I can preview the item before we catalog it. I can stop doing that if it's an issue. Was there follow-through? Yes, there was. So despite counsel's suggestion that there was no follow-through, we see the response from Maggie Bussey, that's what I figured, thanks for clarifying. I think for auditor purposes, if they pull this library credit card statement, they won't be okay with items shipping to employees' houses. If possible, we should be sending all items to the library. And the response from Ms. Barber, will do. There was a clear directive, two separate directives. We should be sending all items to the library. We should definitely have all items shipped to the library that are purchased with the library credit card. That's not a casual statement. That's not a suggestion. That is an affirmative direction given from the accountant to an employee. What happened? After that notice, after that directive, it continued. We continue to see at least 8 items being shipped using the city's credit card to Ms. Barber's personal residence. In total, what the evidence shows is 281 times, plus those 8, where items were shipped to the residence that were purchased on the credit card. Those total, and of those items, 67 were not found. Those 67 totaled approximately $1,300. Now, we heard from counsel information regarding those items since being found. You heard that in his opening statement. We've dug into that since council has submitted the catalog with those items now cataloged. What's interesting, and I would submit members of the city council, what is telling is that those items were added to the catalog after Ms. Barber's interview with the investigator. So after the interview, after she was presented with this evidence, after she was presented with these questions, then and only then did she go back and have these items added to the catalog. Many of the items were added to the catalog the month of June, the month of May, within this last week, June 17th. So it appears from this evidence that in preparation for this very hearing, these items were added to the catalog. I would submit, members of the city council, that is further proof of the misconduct, that is further proof of the deceit that has occurred. In addition to the evidence regarding items that were purchased with the city credit card, we also have evidence of utilization of the city credit card for renting movies off of Amazon Prime, using the credit card for AMC Plus movie rentals, as well as these audible charges. These items were submitted by Ms. Barber to the city and marked as a city expense. That is not an appropriate use of city credit cards. It is not an appropriate use of public funds. The residents in this city pay their hard-earned money, taxes. They pay their taxes to this city. They trust the city of Morris that we are going to expend public funds for a public purpose. When these residents pay their taxes to the city of Morris, they are not expecting city employees to be buying cat toys. They are not expecting city employees to be purchasing movies. They're not expecting city employees to be utilizing these public monies, their hard-earned tax dollars, for public items. Moreover, the misconduct doesn't stop there. We also see an issue associated with the tax exempt status. And from March of 2022 through January of 2025, there are $2,232 of items that were purchased on Ms. Barber's personal credit card using the library's tax exempt status. So what does that mean? The 6.875 tax that goes on sales tax, she did not pay sales tax. She benefited by utilizing the city's tax or the library's tax exempt status for those items. And despite the claim that one was vigilant, that's what the testimony was in the investigatory interview. And despite the statement we heard from counsel that nothing was intentional here and this was a mistake, that happened on approximately 59 occasions, 59 different occasions, where she utilized the tax exempt status versus paying sales tax. A mistake happens once, maybe twice, but to go in and select the tax exempt status on 59 separate occasions, that is not a mistake. That is not someone being vigilant. Ms. Barber appreciates and acknowledges the need to be vigilant. Why? Because she understands that it is not appropriate for a public employee to misuse that tax exempt status. She understands a need to be careful because she understands the common sense rules that a public employee cannot purchase personal items using a city credit card. Now, we heard about a policy. I would ask you this. Does the city have a policy that says a liquor store employee can't open up the till and take $2,000 out and pocket it and spend it on cat toys? No. Why not? It's common sense. Does the city have a policy that says your public works employees can't use the public works credit card to fill up their personal vehicles? No. Why not? Because it's common sense. There are a myriad of standards in the public sector that are common sense. You can't engage in the theft of public funds. You can't misuse a city credit card for personal gain. You can't use a city credit card to buy personal items. You can't use a tax exempt status and avoid paying sales tax. These are common sense items. They are so common sense. When you look, members of the city council, at other hearings involving the public sector, there are a myriad of public sector decisions where public employees have been terminated, if not suspended, for significantly more days and months for far lower dollar amounts. In one case, this was out of Traverse County, and I believe opposing counsel was involved in this case. The county terminated the treasurer for using the county's postage meter for personal mail without proper reimbursement. The total the employee used, 48 cents. 48 cents. The county terminated that employee. The arbitrator reinstated the employee with a lengthy suspension of approximately 12 months. Now, why is that? The arbitrator said theft of any amount is a terminable offense. Even a de minimis amount is not tolerable by someone who is in a position of trust. Even 48 cents represents a sacred trust for and on behalf of the people of the county. And here, the residents of the city of Morris have invested in this city a sacred trust. A sacred trust that when we receive their dollars, when we receive their hard-earned taxpayer dollars, we will follow up on issues when we see a violation of that sacred trust. We will investigate that, and we will hold employees accountable for violating that sacred trust. I would submit, members of the city council, that a 20-day suspension is lenient in this matter, is exceptionally lenient. For the reasons that we will submit and the evidence that we will present, we ask that you uphold the 20-day suspension that was issued to Ms. Barber. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Let's see. As we agreed, Ms. Anderson, did you want to call any of your witnesses now at this point? Or?
Hanson.
Ms.
Ms.
Hanson.
Hanson.
Miss
There's similar
Hanson.
names, that's fine.
Miss Hanson, is
That's
that
fine.
what I thought I said?
No,
I
you
just-
said Anderson.
Yeah.
I knew you were referring to me,
Yes.
it's fine, yes. Yes, the city would like to call investigator Callie Jelstead Nelson.
Okay. I'll ask that,
Can you hear me?
That's for recording, the other
That-
one's for
Yep.
and you might have to turn it on. There you go. So at this point, I'll swear you in. Would you please raise your right hand and state your name?
Callie Jelberg Nelson.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true?
I do.
Okay, you may proceed.
Ms. Jelberg Nelson, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name before. Can you identify for the members of the city council your background, your professional background?
Sure. So I primarily practice in employment law, ranging from advice to litigation, and I also do investigations. I do investigations for government entities and private employers as well.
And ma'am, how many employment investigations do you think you've conducted in your professional career?
Probably about 30. In the beginning, I would kind of pair up with a partner I work with that's a little more seasoned, and after a few years of that, then started doing them on my own.
And prior to the present investigation, the investigation of Ms. Barber, had you conducted any other investigations for the city of Morris?
No,
Had you done any work for the city of Morris?
no,
Was this your first interaction with the city of Morris, at least professionally?
yes.
Now, as part of this investigation, there is a notebook of exhibits before you, and your investigation report, ma'am, is under tab E. And members of the city council, if I could, I would direct you to tab E. And directly behind tab E, is this the investigation report, ma'am, that you submitted to the city?
Yes, it is.
And then as part of that investigation report, were there 13 exhibits?
Yes,
And those exhibits are numbered with tabs 1 through 13, correct?
yes. Some of them would be audio or zip files, so they're not necessarily in this folder.
Okay, and to that regard, in that regard, do you see in the front cover a envelope with a thumb drive that has the two, one audio file, and that audio file is from, I believe, Exhibit 12, which is the interview recording of Ann Barber, as well as Exhibit 4, which I believe was approximately 900 pages, 700 to 900 pages in duration.
Yep, I see that.
Okay, okay. Now, directing your attention, ma'am, back to your investigation report, who contacted you from the city of Morris?
I believe there was a voicemail left, or maybe Rebecca Schrupp talked to my assistant, and then she informed me that the city of Morris was looking for an investigator, so I returned the voicemail.
Okay, and were you contacted on or about February 27, 2025?
Correct.
Okay. And if you could just highlight for the members of the city council kind of how you organized your investigation report.
Okay, so I start with how I was first contacted and kind of what information I was first given. Then go through the scope of the investigation. Sometimes that changes as the investigation goes on, so I like to lay that out. In the investigation portion, lay out who all I talked to and what was considered. The documents reviewed, I provide everything that I was provided or that I gathered. And then I do my interview summaries, kind of just a general summary. It's not word for word, although I did record the interviews in this case. And then I provide my findings at the end.
Now, with reference to the information and the documents that you reviewed, I believe those are listed on page 1 of your investigation report with the bulleted items. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then it also looks like in parenthetical references after you make note of each of those documents as an exhibit, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, looking specifically though at the last bullet point, this is the Excel file identifying charges at issue created by investigator Callie Jelbert Nelson, Exhibit 10. Did you create that document?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in your investigation document, page 1 in the middle, you talk about who you interviewed. Who was interviewed as part of this investigation?
So I always start in my investigations with the primary person, and in this case it would be Ann Barber. So I spoke to her. I always ask people to identify other people that might have information, and through my investigation, Rachel Moe Brown came up as somebody who would potentially have information. So I interviewed her as well.
And during Ms. Barber's interview, was her attorney Justin Anderson present?
Yes.
And was Ms. Barber issued a data practices or Tennyson advisory?
Yes.
And that Tennyson advisory, is that a standard advisory that's issued in the public sector?
Yes, they're very important.
And I believe if you turn to Exhibit 11 attached to the investigation report, this is the Tennyson or data practices advisory that Ms. Barber was issued, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now during council's opening statement, comments were made relative to the fact that prior to the investigatory interview of Ms. Barber, she was not given a list, and I'm not quoting here, I'm summarizing a laundry list of all of the allegations against her. Is it your standard process when doing investigations to provide respondent employees with a laundry list of all of the allegations against them prior to your interview?
No, I never do.
And why not? Explain that to the council.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to interfere with, if you, for example, if you have allegations that somebody said something at work and then you tell the person, I'm going to be asking you about whether you said this, inevitably, they will go and talk to their coworkers and say, hey, you didn't hear me say that, did you? So it just gives a chance to kind of, muddy the waters a little bit. It makes a cleaner investigation if I can just talk to them and get their immediate reaction to what I'm asking them. And it kind of helps eliminate any potential, tampering with the potential evidence that's out there.
And in this case, had you given Ms. Barber a laundry list of the allegations against her in advance, what is your assessment as an investigator as to the potential for or the opportunity for tampering with the evidence?
Yeah, certainly as the library director, and because the evidence involves library records, she could certainly go in and change things. And that was a concern. Although I'll note that prior to my interview, when I talked to Justin Anderson, he understood it was about some type of money issues, and we had a conversation about that.
Okay. Is there any more detail relative to that conversation that you'd like to?
No, I mean, it was just, so this is about financial issues or something, and I confirmed it was. He asked if I could provide more details about what it was about, and I said I don't do that.
Is that your standard operating process?
Yes.
Okay. Now on as part of the documents that you reviewed, on page 1, you reference Exhibit 4 being the zip files and the PDF files of statements. And that's the document that is many, many pages, I think 700 when I checked. In general, can you describe those documents? What are they?
Yeah, so they were all the statements, credit card statements and Amazon receipts that were printed out and then categorized and submitted to the city. So they would have Miss Barber's notation of how she was categorizing them for the budget. And I actually, for the interview, printed out and had a big binder of all 700 something pages, and we flipped through it together.
And those are the documents that are embedded within that thumb drive, correct?
Correct.
Okay, okay. And then also, let's move on to Exhibit 5. Can you identify what Exhibit 5 is?
So Exhibit 5 was provided to me by the city, and so I used that to sort of inform my investigation and the pieces I was going to ask about. But then ultimately I created Exhibit 10 because there were some items that I either could find or I didn't think should make it to the list.
Turn to Exhibit 6. What is this document?
Exhibit 6 is a screenshot of the, let's see, Amazon tax
Exemption program
Yep.
enrollment?
Yeah, I think so.
And what is the significance of the tax exemption enrollment or tax exempt status here?
Well, there was a concern raised that,
And ma'am, if you need to use both hands, I would rather you do that than hold it. up.
okay, is that better? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just worried it's gonna
Thank
roll
you.
off. Okay, so the Amazon tax exemption enrollment was important because there was a concern raised that tax exemption was being used inappropriately.
And then turn to Exhibit 7. What is Exhibit 7? It appears to be a screenshot.
Yes, it's a screenshot of the various credit cards that were assigned to the Amazon account, the library Amazon account.
And when you say the library Amazon account, so within Amazon, is this a screenshot from that account?
Yeah, you can see at the very top right, it says Hello Library at the top. It's
Okay.
probably not very clear, but.
And then within these Amazon, this Amazon screenshot for the library, do we see the various credit cards, including Ann Barber's personal credit card as well as the city's credit card?
Correct.
And then let's turn to Exhibit 10. This is the document that you created, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to go topic by topic through this exhibit, okay? So within this exhibit, Exhibit 10, I'm looking at the first 7 pages. And it says items shipped to 406 West 5th Street. What address is that?
Through my investigation, I confirmed that that's Ann Barber's house.
And pages 1 through 7, were those items all purchased on the City of Morris city credit card?
Yes.
And so if we turn to page 7, we see a total of $4,997.72, correct?
Correct.
What does that total reflect?
So that is all the items that were shipped from December 18th, 2019, all the way up to December 13th, 2024, that were all shipped to Ann Barber's house using the city credit card.
Using the city credit card, okay. And if you look at the last page, page 7, there are approximately, well, how many dates do we see after the October 2023 email exchange between Maggie Bussey and Ann Barber?
8.
So on 8 occasions after receipt of this October 2023 email, what occurred?
Miss Barber still continued to send items to her home using the city credit card.
Now let's look at that email. Within your investigatory exhibits, if you look at page or tab 8, is this where we see the October 2, 2023 email from Maggie Bussey to Ann Barber,
Yes.
where she states we should definitely have all items shipped to the library that are purchased with the library card?
Yes.
And if you turn to tab G at the very end, is that a duplicate copy of that email thread with additional email follow-up and interaction between the two on October 2?
I haven't seen this before, so I'm just reviewing it now. Yes, that looks like additional follow-up to that.
So again, going back to Exhibit 10, page 7, or pages 1 through 7, I'd like you to walk through this exhibit left to right and explain the columns. What does date reflect?
So the date is the date that was listed on the Amazon receipt that was printed.
And that Amazon receipt is on the thumb drive, correct? It's
On it.
within the 700 pages?
Yep, in Exhibit 4.
Okay, and then the book movie title, what does that reflect?
So that's the item that was purchased. And then sometimes it could be a movie, sometimes it was a book.
Okay, and then we see author, that's kind of self-evident, correct?
Correct. On the ones where it's a DVD, it might be the producer, or it might be a main actor.
And some are puzzles, and so wouldn't see an author with a puzzle, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then what is the price?
That's the price that was paid by the city for the item.
And when you say paid for by the city, is that on the city credit card?
Yes, on the city credit card with the receipt. That's where I obtained the price.
And then under catalog date, what does that information tell us?
So that, where it says not found, those are items that when searching through the library catalog system, I could not find the items.
And when you say, when searching through the library catalog, I could not find those items, is that right?
Yep.
I'd like you to describe with specificity how you went about doing that and when you went about doing that.
Sure, so as I was doing my investigation, I'll just really explain in detail. So when I initially had the exhibit from the city, that identified items that were not found. And so when I did my interview with Miss Barber, I went through and asked about those items. But after I heard her explanation, I verified whether I could find the items or not when I searched the library system. So between, the search system is Viking Library System. It's actually a pretty easy system to search in. So you can type in "why my cat" and it will pop up right away if it's there or not. Or I could just search for cat and kind of have to do it that way. I might search for Matthew Inman if it wasn't popping up. So I tried multiple ways to try to find this. So for
So
the,
you would use the title, the author, keywords,
yes.
okay?
So when it says not found, there were some where what the city provided to me in that Excel spreadsheet said it wasn't found, but then I was able to find it just by searching maybe a different way. So there were some I took off, and that's why I created my own list.
And did you do this search on or about March 14th?
Yes, it would have been as I was drafting my report.
Okay. Did you also do any additional, like Googling or Facebook searching or any other search techniques?
Yes, so sometimes for some of them, like let's say Parasite 2, I specifically remember, I didn't know, okay, what is this? Is it a comic book, or is it a movie, or is it a book? I couldn't even tell. So I used also my phone to just Google what is Parasite and try to find out some information about what it is. And then also I looked on the Facebook library page to determine what movies, because they would always post, the library would always post when movies were going to be shown at the library. So I also used that to verify whether movies were shown at the library or not.
And then how did you evaluate the tax exempt issue and whether or not items were taxable?
So I would, well, obviously like clothing items, I would just not include, I wouldn't include that on the list because they wouldn't have tax anyway. But if I
Minnesota sales tax is not charged for clothing, right?
yes, so I would go into my own, using my phone, just enter the items on, like, I honestly did not know whether cat food was taxable or not. So I had just put it in my cart and saw whether tax would be applied or not. So I kind of verified that way whether tax should be applied or not.
And so back to the catalog, on or about March 14th, that's when you search utilizing the Viking system, as well as you've talked about the Facebook searches you've done, as well as the Google searches that you've done. Did you do anything else relative to that searching? Or does that summarize those items, or that process?
I think that summarizes what I did to search for them online.
And so then on page 7, the total of 4,997, is that total items not found, or is it all of the items?
That's just all the items that were shipped to her house, the total of them.
Okay. And if you turn to page 14 of your investigation report under your findings, I believe that you state of that 4,997, there were 67 items which were shipped to Ms. Barber's house that cannot be found, and the total value of those items is $1,376.88. Is that accurate?
Yes, and that's what pages 8 and 9 reflect in Exhibit 10.
So let's go on to pages 8 and 9. So is it accurate that pages 8 and 9 of Exhibit 10 are a subset of pages 1 through 7?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And when I say a subset, meaning a summary or a listing of just those items that were not found and the total value?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Turn to page 10 of the Exhibit 10. What does this tell us?
This is a listing of all the Prime Video rentals that were charged to the city library card.
And here we see a date, a title, a price, and then there's a column that reads category assigned by Barber. What
So as I said, when I received the packet of receipts, they would have handwritten numbers on them. And I confirmed through my interview with Miss Barber that she would print out these receipts and then categorize them. So she categorized all of them as 5900 and submitted them to the city for categorizing.
And is the categorizing 5900, meaning it's an authorized expense to the city?
Yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you draw from the fact that Ms. Barber assigned that category 5900 to those charges?
Well, then that eliminates any representation that it was somehow just a mistake or some oversight, because she specifically assigned a category to the charges.
And the total of those items on page 10?
Is $79.11.
And again, what credit card was utilized for those items?
The city library card.
When you interviewed Ms. Barber, what was her explanation as to the movie rentals on the city credit card, the Prime Video rentals?
She indicated to me that she needed to rent the movies either because they were going to be shown, they were shown at the library, or she needed to preview them in order to determine whether to show them at the library.
And as part of your investigatory work, did you analyze that explanation?
I did.
And what conclusions, if any, did you draw? I'm looking at the bottom of page 14 of your report for reference.
Okay. Well, first, I wasn't able to confirm that any of these movies, well, other than the one, The Muppet Christmas, that was shown at the library, although the date it was purchased was 3 days later, so that was questionable.
It was shown 3 days before it was purchased?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also, when I went to the library, there was a DVD of The Muppet Christmas in the storage room, so there wouldn't be a need to rent it. Now, I don't necessarily know when that DVD was purchased, but it was just another indicator that it didn't need to be rented.
Was there any evidence that these movies on page 10 were in fact shown at the library after their purchase?
No, I did not find any evidence of that. And based on my interview with the other witness, she indicated they already have kind of a listing of pre-approved movies, so there wouldn't be a need to have someone watch a movie in order to determine whether it would be shown at the library, because that work's already been done by Swank.
And let's talk about Swank. What is Swank?
So I'll have to review again what
Top of
that
page
stood
15,
for.
Yeah.
My understanding is that in order to show movies in a public place, you have to have this Swank license, and that allows the library to show movies. And because they have a Swank license, they have a predetermined list of movies that they actually can show in public. Obviously, so that it avoids playing rated R movies out in a public place. They have a list of movies that are already approved. So when I interviewed the witness, she indicated that, no, we wouldn't need to preview movies because we already know what we can and can't show.
Did you determine that Ms. Barber's stated explanation was implausible?
I did.
And for the reasons that you identify, or for other reasons?
No, for that, I also, just as a general common sense issue, I don't think there's any expectation that a library director would preview every single movie that's gonna be put into circulation at a library or shown at a library. Some of them are obviously not really controversial movies, so I don't think there would be any reason to have to review it before it's even shown or before it's purchased for the city.
Turn to page 11 of Exhibit 10. This says other city credit card charges shipped to home, correct?
Correct.
So these are items that were purchased on the city credit card, correct?
Yes.
The date of the purchase, the description, and the total. Tell us about this document, or this page.
So some of these, as you can see, I put this together as these were just other kind of almost miscellaneous purchases that were also shipped to Ann Barber's house. And some of them were puzzles, t-shirts, Apple AirPods. Some of them did appear to be like office supplies things, but it didn't really make sense why they would be sent to her home rather than just to the library if they were for library use.
Do we see hair dye,
Yes, hair dye.
seaweed snaps?
Yes,
T-shirts,
yes,
cat pens, cute cat pens?
correct.
Cordless phone batteries?
Yes.
Now, as part of the investigatory interview, did you ask Ms. Barber about shipping T-shirts to her home?
Yes, I specifically asked her about that.
And what did you learn vis-a-vis that question or that line of questioning?
So she explained that those T-shirts would be sent to her house out of convenience because the T-shirts are embroidered with the City of Morris logo, and that she told me that the embroiderer that the city uses is right next to her house, just a few blocks away, so it was just easier to have them shipped to her house. Through my investigation, I found out that the city embroiderer is actually across the street from the library, so it wasn't actually any more convenient. Also, I looked up her address and it's right in town, so it's not like it was, 30 miles away. So the convenience factor didn't really make sense to me.
Then if we turn to page 11, we see AMC Plus charges on city credit card. What is AMC Plus?
That is a movie, like a movie streaming service, kind of like HBO.
Okay, and what do we see is, we see the date and the price, correct?
Correct.
And then we see again, category assigned by Barber, and what is that information again?
Again, the Exhibit 4 contained all the receipts that were submitted by Ms. Barber, where she assigned on each one the category 5900 to them and submitted them to the city.
So does that mean each of these invoices were all printed out by Ms. Barber and she would specifically note on them 5,900?
Yes.
And then submit them to the city for reimbursement?
Yes.
Or for payment, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. What, if any, explanation did Ms. Barber have relative to these AMC Plus charges?
Her explanation was that it was a mistake, that she was, somehow, maybe Amazon just added it onto the account without her knowing. But I thought that explanation was not credible, given that she actually printed out the receipt and assigned it and then submitted it to the city.
And that totals $62.93, correct?
Correct.
Okay, turn to page 13. What do we see here?
These are a listing of the audible charges that were charged to the city and also assigned a category by Ms. Barber and submitted to the city.
And what is Audible?
Audible is an audiobook service.
And what information did Ms. Barber provide an explanation regarding Audible?
She denied that she ever added that to the city account, and indicated that she submitted a fraudulent charge report for that when she found out about it.
And what was your assessment of, and I'm looking at page 3 of your investigation report near the top, just by way of reference. What was your review or understanding of that claim regarding the fact that she claims these are fraudulent charges?
Well, I didn't find that credible for 2 reasons. One, she actually printed out the receipt and then assigned 5900 to it and submitted it, so she's recognizing that the charge is happening. The other part of my investigation, I was provided the charges that occurred on her personal account and on February, let me get the date right.
Is it February
27th?
Okay.
February 27th, 2025. Ms. Barber actually purchased Audible on her personal card. So to me, that indicates that while she submitted as a fraudulent charge for the city, once she lost that subscription service, she renewed it on her own personal account.
Then we turn to Exhibit 10, pages 14 and 15. Is the information on these 2 pages different from the preceding pages?
Yeah, so these are a listing of all the personal purchases that Ms. Barber made, not using the city credit card, that used or benefited from the tax exempt status.
So are these all purchases on Amazon,
Correct.
utilizing Ms. Barber's personal credit card, not the city credit card, correct?
Correct.
But tax exempt status was selected, correct?
That's correct.
And what is the total of that amount?
$2,232.83.
Okay. And as part of those items, do we see things like a microwave oven?
Yes.
And so in the page 15, about halfway down the page, we see a microwave oven purchased for approximately $178, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Are there other kind of larger ticket items associated with this tax exempt status?
Yeah, I
Gas
believe.
tower, things like that?
Yeah, there was also a vacuum, I believe, purchased. That would have been another bigger ticket item.
Okay. And okay, so those items are all totaled there at 2,232, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about, let's go back to page 11. Sorry, I skipped this. Page 11 has those items that were city credit card charges shipped to Ms. Barber's home, correct?
Correct.
And we see on this listing a pair of second generation Apple AirPods in the amount of $109.99 purchased on March 14, 2022, correct?
Correct.
And what explanation did Ms. Barber provide relative to this item?
So initially, Ms. Barber explained that the Apple AirPods were purchased for this library for e-readers, but then after the confusion was cleared up that e-readers wouldn't actually be reading it to you, audible, so you would need headphones. Then she explained that they're just available for patrons to use for audiobooks. And I asked how would they know that they're available? She said any of the staff would know that they're available for patrons to try out. I asked where they were located, and she indicated they were in a drawer in her desk, in her office.
And so then when you interviewed a staff member, correct?
Yes.
And her name is Rachel Moe Brown,
Yes.
correct? And what did Ms. Moe Brown know about these AirPods?
She did not have any knowledge of there being Apple AirPods available for patron use. She said that there are headphones that are available for use.
So over the ear headphones versus a device that one would insert into one's ear, right?
Right.
Okay. In addition to that information from Ms. Moe Brown, during the course of your interview with Ms. Barber, what explanation did she have relative to the fact that these items many of these items were not found on the catalog. What explanation did you receive from her in that regard?
She gave a couple different explanations. At first, she said, well, I think they're there. They're at the library. They're just waiting to be cataloged. And then she also said they could have been eliminated from the library system because of the carpet renovation that occurred, that they got rid of a lot of items because of that. And I'm trying to think of anything else she would have said. One, she specifically said the lost highway, she recalled that that specifically was a lost item. She recalled trying to set up a display case and looking for that item and knew that it was, she had determined that it was lost. So that one was legitimately lost, but she recalled that it was at the library at some point.
So with reference to Ms. Barber's claim that they were there, that they were at the library, what did you do to evaluate that claim?
Well, because they weren't even in the system at all, so the idea that they were just waiting to be cataloged seemed to be the most legitimate concern, that they would be, and Ms. Barber indicated that there's a shelf where they're waiting to be cataloged, so I went to the library and looked at the shelf, and that's included in my report.
Page 11, is that correct?
Yes, page 11 is the, I admittedly, I was expecting there to just be like bookshelves and bookshelves of items waiting to be cataloged. It was
And why did you expect to see that?
because there were so many not found items, so that would explain where they all are. But when I got to the library and saw just this kind of handful of books that were waiting to be cataloged, none of them were of the titles that were not found. That kind of eliminated that as a potential explanation for why they couldn't be found.
Did Mo Brown also discuss the fact that, did she also take you to a storage room in the library?
Yes.
And what did you find the items in the storage room?
No, I did not. And there were, admittedly, the storage room is kind of large and has a lot of stuff in it, but none of these like new items were in any area where you could see they were waiting to be cataloged.
And did you ask Ms. Mo Brown about the timeline for cataloging? Does it take 2 years to catalog an item?
I did. She denied that there would ever be an occasion where it would take her 2 or 3 years to catalog a book. She said possibly 1 year if it got lost somewhere, got misplaced, and then she didn't get to it, but she denied that it would ever take that long to catalog a book. She explained the process of how to catalog. Generally, once they scan the barcode, a lot of the information just auto-populates, so it's not really a long process to catalog a book.
And it looks like you have a picture on page 11 of that process where they scan a barcode, and then information is displayed on the computer that the computer generates, and that's what's done to catalog the item, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you also asked Ms. Will Brown about books being taken out of circulation in preparation for the carpet renovation, correct?
Correct.
And what did she describe as far as that process and books being noted withdrawn?
Yeah, they would print out a list and kind of go through how long, when's the last time this book has been checked out. Maybe they'd take it out of circulation because it's just not being checked out by people. Ms. Barber also explained that they would take things out of circulation because of the condition, if they were really beat up. But through my investigation, the purchases that were made so recently just wouldn't have been eliminated in that process because they were brand new books. So they wouldn't have been able to make a determination that they're not being checked out frequently enough to keep them because they were just purchased.
And then, did you also look for the AirPods?
I did. I went in Miss Barber's office, looked around. I did not see that her desk contained any type of drawers. I did not dig for them, but Miss Mulbrown had no knowledge that they even existed, so that,
And had Ms. Barber told you that staff would absolutely know of that?
yes, she indicated that any staff member would know about them.
So with reference to your findings, ma'am, if you look at pages 14 and 15, you made findings regarding the fact that Ms. Barber misused the city's credit card, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And with reference to that misuse of the credit card, can you explain for the council kind of the basis for that finding? What facts led you to that finding? What evidence led you to that finding?
Sure. So to send the items to her home using the city credit card is kind of enough to raise a concern. Obviously, if you went to across the street to a physical store and took items, used the city credit card and then took them home, and then eventually brought them into the city office, that would still look a little questionable. But really the concern for me was the items that were that couldn't be found, because that indicates there's a potential that she is keeping them for herself. Certainly there are some purchases that were personal in nature that she benefited from.
And did Ms. Barber tell you that none of these items would be found at her home?
Yes, I specifically asked her, obviously I don't have warrant power, but I asked her, if I come to your house, will I find any of these items? And she said I would not.
And then you also made findings regarding kind of your assessment of her claim that she didn't do this intentionally, and that this was a mistake, right? What was your assessment of that as part of your findings?
Yeah, I mean, she indicated that she never would have intentionally done this, but at the same time, she specifically printed out the receipts, assigned a category to them, and submitted them to the city. So whether she was in a hurry on one occasion and let it slip by once, but the number of times that she specifically submitted these expenses to the city and categorized them indicated that it wasn't just an innocent mistake. And her explanation that she was really vigilant about the tax exemption thing didn't really bear out either, given that it happened on so many occasions.
And her stated explanation that items that could not be found were simply waiting to be cataloged at the library, what was your assessment of that?
I found that just couldn't be true because of the catalog area. The books weren't found there, and they were not in the system at all.
And if there's evidence introduced into this hearing record that shows that subsequent to Ms. Barber's interview in March of on March 7, 2025, in the months of May 2025, April 2025, even June of 2025, these items were then cataloged. What, as an investigator, what would your assessment of that evidence be?
Yeah, so in preparation for today, I went and logged back into the Viking library system and looked. And notably, all of them are now in the system, all 67 items. Or not, well, there's a couple that I still couldn't find. But they're all checked out. And they all have one of 3 due dates. So that tells me that they're not physically at the library still. I guess it raises a concern whether they ever did physically make it to the library or not. Obviously, the due dates where there's groups of them all having the same due date looks suspicious to me as an investigator.
Does the fact that the books were cataloged after your interview with Ms. Barber also raise suspicion?
Yes, it does.
And explain that.
Well, obviously, I would, if I were still investigating, I would want to investigate who cataloged these, and how was that done, the dates it was done, and really importantly, right now, I would want to know who checked out all of these items, because for a long time, they were missing. We couldn't find them, and now suddenly they're the hot ticket items that everybody's checking out. And one of them specifically was the Lost Highway that was lost before, according to Miss Barber. Now it's in circulation and apparently checked out. So it's been found, but it's been checked out.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Good, need a break? So of the 30 investigations, how many of those were those all independently yours, or how many did you conduct with the
I probably did about 5 with the college.
So 25 on your own?
Yep.
And in any of those 25, have you recommended that discipline not occur?
I don't, as an investigator, I don't really get involved in necessarily recommending whether discipline occurs. I just give my findings.
And have those findings consistently been favorable to the employee,
No.
generally to the employer?
I don't know what you mean.
Of the 25 investigations that you've conducted, in how many cases have you determined that misconduct has occurred?
Probably 85%.
You could turn to Exhibit 6 of your investigative report, the Amazon exemption program enrollment. Do you know if there is a default setting with respect to the Amazon account?
Miss Barber indicated you check a box to do that.
Do you see the bold language using your exemption?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, let me know if I'm wrong. Once a state sales tax exemption is active on your account, your purchase in that state will be exempt from tax unless you opt out at checkout. I take that to mean that that is the default, and you need to check a box if it is a non-tax exempt purchase. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds like that.
During the course of your investigation, did you determine whether or not there were any purchases made by Ms. Barber from the Amazon account that were subject to taxation?
In the receipts I reviewed, I didn't see taxes applied.
So every purchase was subject to the tax exemption? Every purchase that you reviewed that Ms. Barber made was their personal?
No.
No. There were some that taxes were included.
Yes. Only the ones that I've identified on that last page of Exhibit 10.
During the course of your investigation, did you review any policies about shipping items to your home?
No.
Would you agree that the significance is that items were missing?
Partially. I think shipping to someone's home using the city card is also significant.
Okay, the optics don't look very good.
Correct, yep.
Would there be anything wrong or violate common sense if Ms. Barber took library materials that were shipped to the library to her home?
According to Ms. Mo Brown, that does happen, but she indicated that was a rare occasion that occurred.
But you didn't see any policy about prohibiting items from being shipped to the,
No, I did not.
do you have an explanation as to why you were provided an incomplete detail that is referenced in your report as Exhibit 8?
Well, I guess that my explanation is I wasn't aware it was incomplete when I was given it.
Okay. But the issue that Ms. Bussey was addressing was an audit issue, correct?
No, well, I guess the way I interpreted the email was she was saying, don't send items to your home, and Ms. Barber agreed that she wouldn't do that. And Ms. Barber in my interview indicated she understood she shouldn't do that.
And in about 18 months, 8 items were shipped to her house.
After the October 2023 exchange, 8 more items were sent to her.
So what did you do to locate or search for the missing materials?
So as I said, I would go into the Viking library system and search, whether I searched for a partial title, the author, any kind of keyword searches to try to find it in the Viking library system. And then I also looked at the cataloging shelf, the physical cataloging shelf and storage area.
And is my understanding correct that Ms. Mo Brown is the person in charge of cataloging?
Yes, at the time I interviewed her, she was on a temporary leave, so someone was filling in for her, but she was the primary cataloger.
And during the course of the investigation, or any investigation, you just want the truth to come out.
Absolutely.
Did Ms. Barber suggest that you talk to other individuals who are employed at the library?
She did. She named, I believe, a Meredith and a Karen, I think.
And those employees would have been working at the library during the time of your investigation and the time that these allegations surfaced.
Yes, they were.
Why is it that you didn't interview them?
Well, because of the primary explanation of that these items were waiting to be cataloged, I wanted to talk to the person who had the most experience cataloging. My understanding was that Meredith was just filling in for a temporary period of time, so she wouldn't necessarily know the full history covering all these dates.
If Ms. Barber was previewing materials and utilizing Amazon Prime, would that be a valid expense for a librarian whose goal is to provide exposure to all sorts of different things?
It could be, I guess I would question the, you know, the usefulness of that time. It could be.
And just because a movie appears on a Swank copyright, does that necessarily mean that it's appropriate for the audience that Ms. Barber knows better than any of us in the room?
Well, Swank has already determined that it can be viewed in public. Miss Barber's explanation was if there's someone getting punched, she wants to be able to see that in order to know whether children walking by might see that movie. So, you know, to go to that level of detail to find out items. I think it's a slippery slope because then you can basically legitimize every single book you read and every movie you watch to say it's for potential viewing purposes at the library.
And why did Ms. Barber explain that the church shift to her home?
Well, a combination of convenience, mistake, that she wanted to preview them at home or review them at home, and she couldn't do that at the library because her time was in too much demand and it was kind of an open area.
Were you made aware that certain of the missing materials were, discovered in the catalog prior to Ms. Barber returning to work?
I don't know when she returned to work, so I don't know that. I did look at them recently yesterday and discovered that they were now in the catalog system.
And in an effort to locate those missing items, you looked at where the items would be typically cataloged, and you talked to Ms. Brown.
In addition to the storage room and Miss Barber's office.
And it was just you and Ms. Mulbrown that were searching.
Miss Mulbrown didn't participate in the search at all. I try not to tell witnesses exactly. I don't want to overly involve employees and staff members in kind of these employment investigations.
And how long did you spend searching?
We were probably walking, it's a small area. The catalog area didn't take very long at all. I took pictures of that, so probably just a couple minutes there, a couple minutes in her office, and maybe 10 minutes in the storage room.
Did Ann explain to you that not all items are cataloged?
She may have like puzzles. I don't know if they get cataloged, so I wouldn't be able to find them in the catalog online.
So it's accurate that, Ann denies subscribing to either AMC or Audible, that what you understand her position to be.
Correct.
Did you contact Audible or AMC Plus to determine when those subscriptions were activated?
What the evidence I have is the dates of those charges, so that is the dates I would say they were activated. So for AMC Plus on Exhibit 10, page 12, started in September 2023. And the Audible charges charged on the city credit card started October 2024.
But no contact was made with either of the entities to who subscribed?
Well, they're on the city account, I don't know what I would find from them.
Did you look at the usage of either the Audible app or the AMC Plus to see if they were in fact accessed?
For both of them, Miss Barber denied that she used them at all, that they were mistakenly charged, so they weren't being used.
So if she didn't use them, she didn't benefit from them.
Well, she submitted the expenses to the city as if they were legitimate charges, so that was the concern.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Just have a couple of reader up, if that's acceptable.
Yes.
Mayor, thank you. Ma'am, I'll start at the end and I'll work my way up just to give you a roadmap here. So let's talk about these audible charges. The council seems to be suggesting that someone else may have subscribed to Audible and to these other streaming platforms, I guess, if you want to characterize Audible as a streaming platform. I'd like you to explain why you tie that conduct to Ms. Barber. Explain that to us.
Sure, so specifically with the Audible charges, that was the one that Miss Barber specifically submitted a fraudulent charge, so she was saying they were mistakenly charged, they should not be on, there should be no Audible account. So there was never an indication that someone legitimately purchased it and was using it. The issue was that the charges should have never been applied because nobody was using it. And the same for AMC Plus, that they were, it wasn't being used by Miss Barber. My understanding is she's the only one that had access to the Amazon account. So if there was somebody else using the Amazon account, that would be another issue of concern.
And was Ms. Barber the only individual who used the Amazon account based on your investigatory process?
Yes, Mo Brown confirmed that Miss Barber is the only one that has access to the Amazon account.
And when was let's just dig in a little bit more to this fraudulent claim. So on page 3 of your investigatory interview, at the top it states, on Wednesday, February 26th, she called the credit card company regarding the charges, and the credit card company forwarded them to the fraud department and removed the charges from the credit card. The credit card company then closed the account and issued a new card, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and was that on her personal credit card or the city credit card?
That was the city credit card.
And then with reference to the AMC though, well, there wasn't a claim that the AMC charges were fraudulent, correct?
Correct. The explanation Ms. Barber gave for that was maybe something that Amazon just kind of added on, you know, like try this for a little bit, and it just got added on mistakenly.
But what about Ms. Barber printing out the receipts and categorizing them as 3,900, meaning appropriate for payment by the city? How would you evaluate that claim then?
So, as I said before, if it was just a one-time thing, which she said, one of the occasions, she said, oh, I was just trying to hurry and get through the receipts because I didn't want to have any late charges, so I must have just missed that. But then when it happened, obviously with the AMC charges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different times, where she specifically printed off the receipt, categorized it as 5900 and submitted it to the city. That to me shows knowledge that the charges are occurring. And she's responsible for making sure that the money is well spent and on legitimate purchases.
If someone sees a fraudulent card on that invoice, would you expect them to know 5,900 and submit it to the city?
No.
Let's talk a little bit about the process by which one selects tax exempt status. Did Ms. Barber explain to you that you have to check a box on Amazon to utilize the tax exempt status?
Yeah, I recall her specifically saying she was pretty vigilant about making sure that I thought she indicated in her testimony to me that it was a box that you check, and that she was pretty vigilant about making sure that would not get checked.
Now, directing your attention, ma'am, to Exhibit F as in Frank, do you see that?
I do.
This is an unofficial transcript of your audio recording of Ms. Barber's interview. You recorded Ms. Barber's interview, correct?
I did.
And that audio recording is included on the thumb drive, correct?
Correct.
And in this unofficial transcript, directing your attention to page 46. Are you there?
I am.
They're numbered at the bottom of the page, so I'm on page 46 of 61. And on this page, you're questioning Ms. Barber about the tax exempt status and the process, right?
Yes.
And you talked to her about the fact that on this Amazon account, she has both her personal credit card as well as the city credit card, correct?
Correct.
And so then you asked her about how would you get tax exempt, right?
Yes.
And you also asked her how would you separate those two different types of purchases, right?
Yes.
And did Ms. Barber tell you that there was a box, another box that you would check to say whether the purchase was tax exempt, whether it falls under that or not, right?
Yes.
Okay. And she also indicates that she was pretty vigilant about checking or not checking the box, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as you review these invoices, were there some personal items utilizing Ms. Barber's personal credit card for which she paid sales tax?
Yes, there were some.
So if council is suggesting that it was a default setting of no taxes and Ms. Barber just forgot to uncheck the box, is that consistent with the testimony and the evidence you looked at and gathered during the course of your investigation?
That would not be consistent.
You were asked questions about whether if Ms. Barber shipped library items to the library that were purchased using the city credit card, took those library items home, and then returned them to the library, assuming they were appropriately cataloged, whether or not that would be permissible. Words to that effect. You recall that line of questioning?
I do.
Is there any evidence in the record that that's what happened here?
No.
Can you expand on that?
So, well, one, the items that I've indicated were not found were never cataloged. So there'd be no way of tracking whether they were simply being reviewed by Ms. Barber or not. They never made their way into the system. The other part is Ms. Mo Brown testified that when I asked her if Miss Barber takes items home to kind of preview them, she said that only happens on a very rare occasion. So it would not be to the degree that Exhibit 10 shows of all the times where items are being sent to Miss Barber's home.
And then you were also asked at the beginning of your testimony, ma'am, about your role recommending disciplinary action, and you testified that you're not involved in the disciplinary decision-making process. Why not? Can you explain that?
Well, because I'm an independent person. Like as I said in the very beginning, I think you'll see in Exhibit F, I say, I don't have a skin in the game. I truly don't. I just want to find out the truth and do my fact finding. I don't care whether someone is found to have committed misconduct or not. It doesn't make a difference to me. I just try to find the truth and list out my findings.
Nothing further, thank you.
I have none.
Nothing?
Questions from city council members?
Pardon?
Questions from city council members?
City Council, do you have any questions of Ms. Jensen?
I do. With reference to the 67 items, you mentioned that all of them now are categorized, or cataloged.
Now all of them I can find in the Viking library system.
Does it say in
Actually,
there?
I just want to be clear, not all of them. There were a couple that still were not found.
Okay. Does it state in there who cataloged them?
I'm not able to see that.
You're not-
All I
it
can
doesn't
see
show
is that
that?
it's checked out in the due date.
All right, so on your understanding, I think through that, was it stated that do you need the book to catalog it?
Well, I don't know how that works.
Or the item? Does the item have to be present for the you don't know that we're, okay,
I
probably
don't,
that's not
you
right.
might be able to just get it off of
Okay.
online.
All right, thank you.
I have one question too, just a clarification. So the items in Exhibit 10, that items shipped to 406 West Fifth Street, not found, those were items that were not cataloged at that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Anything that says not found, there was no record of them ever being cataloged up to the point you did that.
Correct. I wasn't able to find them anywhere in the system.
Okay, thank you.
I have no further questions. Any other members of the council before I release Ms. Nelson? Okay. There you go. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I think I've been told our battery's running low for recording purposes, so maybe now you want that recess.
We could take a brief 10-minute recess and reconvene shortly after 5 or so. So we are at right here, right? We're done.